Hi, my name is Dirk Norris, and I'm the president of the New Mexico Film Foundation. And we're bringing you this video on how to light yourself for video auditions in anticipation of an actor showcase that we're going to be presenting and partnering with New Mexico, or the Film Stock Film Festival. And we wanted to do this workshop so you have an idea of a good way of lighting yourself when you present your video auditions. Helping us today, we have 3 actors that are going to be giving presentations in different lighting situations, and I'd like to introduce them now. Our first actress is Elnora Keller. Elnora, thank you. And Michael Guajardo. Michael will be our second actor. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Aaron Alexander. Aaron, thank you.
Thank you, Dirk.
All right. And conducting this workshop today is going to be Toby Younis with New Mexico, Streaming New Mexico, excuse me. And he will be going through different lighting situations and explaining different ways you can set it up. So Toby.
Dirk, thanks for asking us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for doing this.
As Dirk mentioned, my name is Toby Younis. I'm the executive producer at Streaming New Mexico. I've been lighting sets and people for over 35 years, and I'd like to share some of that experience with you today. I know this is intended for an actor who is preparing their first audition, so we're going to talk about a lot of things today. We are going to be talking about cameras just a little bit so that you have a sense of the kind of camera that you should be using for your audition. In addition to that, we're going to be talking a little bit about audio, and I'm going to give you the various options for making sure that you have the strongest possible audio, because casting directors always count the quality of the audio in your audition, and it can affect your audition and how the casting director sees you. When Dirk first asked me to do this workshop, he said to make sure that I used equipment that could be easily found at one of the big box stores like Home Depot or Lowe's. And I've done that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to walk through a series of lighting situations using Dirk's actors for their auditions. And we're going to start with a real simple a $15 light that I bought at Lowe's. And we're going to start with that 1 light setup. Then we're going to go to a 2 light setup. We're going to go to a 3 light setup, and we're going to finish the day by showing you the setup that I use for the interviews that I've done and that I've used in the over 200 documentaries that I've worked on. So you're going to get the complete range of capabilities in terms of lighting, and by the end of the day you should have a good sense of not only how to light yourself, but basically how to light other people as well to get the best effect. So it's going to be a long day. We should be able to get all of this done in about an hour and a half, and we're going to take breaks in between as we do each of the setups. But you can be assured, as I said, by the end of the day, you'll be far more knowledgeable about lighting, and especially lighting your own audition. So we're going to take a break right now and go to a new setup, and then we'll be back in just a few minutes. 3, 2, 1, fade from. Hi, we're back, and we're going to talk about our first lighting situation. And what I wanted to do was make this the simplest possible lighting situation you could imagine. What I'm going to do is point over to this camera over here, and I'm going to switch over to that camera so that you can see the setup that we have. All we're using is natural light coming from this window right here. Now, normally this window faces away from the sun, but the sun is over to the east of us, and it's reflecting off that white wall that you see in the background. So it's actually producing more light than it normally does. But as you can see, it produces enough light to make an audition. And the setup that we have is we have our actor facing their camera. We also have a shotgun mic pointed directly at her so that it's out of the way and so that we can get the best possible audio. Now, your audio solution at this point is a pretty expensive one. We're going to use it for the audition, and later on I'm going to show you some options that you have for using less expensive audio and still get close to the very same result. Okay? So again, if you look at, switch over to red for me, and what you're going to see is that although this light, it's very broad and it's very harsh. because as you can see, it lights this side of her face, and without any fill or reflection over here, there's no way to get any additional texture in this side of her face. So all we're doing is lighting for a simple situation where you have to do a quick audition and you're using the natural light that comes from the window. And now we can go ahead with Elnora's audition. I'm going to step off camera so that we can do that.
I thought we were talking about dogs.
When you lose your sleep, you turn into a monster, and I can't handle that because I'm living with a monster.
What do you want me to do?
It's compromise.
I just did, but you shot me down, so obviously you have an idea.
I do. Let's give away the dogs.
They're souls. You can't give away souls.
Dogs are dogs. You bring them home, and when they destroy your life, you give them away.
They're not just dogs. They're infant, fragile, dependent puppies. You can't just throw them away because they chewed your shoe.
I want quality in my life. They're taking away the quality of my life.
Okay, I see. Right. So giving away with one of the puppies will improve your quality of life?
Yeah.
I do not want to give away one of the puppies.
Well, then we have a problem.
Seems so. And cut.
All right, let's go back to our blue camera for just a moment and talk about the setup again. Wide windows, soft light, not direct sunlight. The sun should be on the other side of the window. The ideal light, of course, is a window facing north. That's what all the Renaissance artists used in all their paintings that made them so famous. I'm going to have Sean switch over to our green camera so that you can get an overall look of the scene. Again, the broad windows, the shotgun microphone collecting audio, and our actress facing at a slight angle to the window so that it lights at a 45-degree angle on her face. All right? So we're going to do another setup, and we're going to start using some lights. Before I start using those lights, I'm going to explain to you some of the lighting options that you have that you can actually buy by going to one of your big box stores like Lowe's, Home Depot, or Walmart, Sam's Clubs. All of them have these kinds of lights. So let's take a break right now, and we'll be back with a new setup. Thank you, Elnora.
Thank you.
All right, we're back. Before we start lighting our subjects for the next auditions, I wanted to talk a little bit about inexpensive lighting solutions. So when I first talked with Dirk, as I mentioned earlier, he said, make sure that we could come up with some lighting solutions that are not only reasonable and practical, but inexpensive. So what I did yesterday is I went over to Lowe's, a Home Depot-like store, and I started looking for these reflectors. And the reason I know these reflectors work is that when I first started in photography way back in the 1970s, these were the first lights that I had, these reflectors with the clips that I could clip on anything. And my first studio consisted of my basement, and I would clip this to one of the doors, another one to a chair, and another one to a stool, and that was my lighting setup for portraits. They're very efficient. They produce a lot of light. This choice, as I said, is a 10-inch aluminum reflector. It was list priced at $14.95, but because it had some dings in it, I was able to convince them to knock $3 off the price of the reflector, so I got it for $12. The light is a 150-watt vanity light. It's usually used in bathrooms. It's very bright, and the reason that I like it is because it casts light not only through the front, but it casts light back into the reflector, and of course that reflector makes it very soft. If you have 3 of these, you'll have enough to do a really good job of lighting your audition. They're very complete, and I'm going to show you how in the next audition how they work, not only how they're placed, but how they affect the actor and how you can get different lighting effects with just this combination. So 3 of them, reflector, do a little bit of talking about how the reflector is dented because they're always dented. You'll get $3 knocked off. $3 for the bulb, so now you got $15 per reflector, 3 reflectors. You got a $45 investment in lighting, and by the end of this workshop, you'll know exactly how to use them. Now, I did have some other options. Vanna, if I may, thank you. I happened to find this a couple of weeks ago, and the reason is we do a lot of work. Our company does some work at night, And it's always hard taking down our production system without lighting. And I found this. It's a fluorescent handheld light. It says that it's rated at 28 watts, but it lights a pretty good sized under the bleachers room, as we call it. And it was only, did I say it was $28? So it makes a good light. So for 3 of these, you're in about $90. It should be plenty of light for you. And it's a very soft light. And later on, when I'm going to have one of our actors come up, and I'm just going to turn it on, and I'm going to move it from side to side so that you see the effect that this light has on the actor. But again, it's very white and it's very soft, so it's very good to use for your audition. One of the options that has come up recently, and you can find these either in kits like this, or you can actually find them in the big box stores, not designed to work for video. This is a video LED light. This entire kit that includes the light, 2 Sony style batteries, the charger, the AC adapter, and the light stand mount cost me $70. So for about $210, you could get 3 of these. They're very efficient. We use these in lieu of a softbox when we don't have a lot of space. What's great about this particular light, and for the price, is that you'll see on the back it actually has 2 knobs. One is a rheostat. That controls the amount of light that it outputs. So if you need just a little bit of light, you can change it by using the rheostat. If you needed it at full lighting, you just turn that rheostat up and you get full lighting. So it's very convenient to use when you have a key light and a film light and you want them exactly in the same position. Then you can roll one of them down to about half using the rheostat. The other thing that's nice about these computer-controlled LEDs is on this side there's another knob. And this knob controls the color of the light from 3200 Kelvin, which is a very yellow light that you might want to use outdoors to compensate for the blue, to 5600 Kelvin, which is a very blue light that we might want to use in combination with these halogen lamps, which tend to be on the yellow side. So between the quality and color of the light, you have very soft quality. You can control your color, and you can control the amount of light that you're putting on your subject. And as I said, the prices on these have come down tremendously. This one is pretty high end, and it cost me $70. It also comes with this magnetic clip-on soft frame so that you can soften it even more. So it's certainly an option for you as you're looking at your lighting capabilities. What we're going to talk about in just a few minutes is cameras and audios. We're going to go from lights to cameras. I'm going to give you some advice on some of the cameras that you can use, and we're going to talk about how to use them with the lighting setup that we're going to create for you. So let's take a break. We're going to go to another setup and talk about cameras and audio. All right, we're back. Let's spend a little time talking about cameras and audio equipment. So on the high end, and actually this isn't the highest possible end, this is a JVC GC PX100. We have 3 of these in our kit. The reason we have these in our kit is A, they're compact, B, they have great lenses on them, C, they have a 1/2-inch chip in them, so they're very resolute, D, they have a 40 times zoom on them, and they're full HD. So this camera in its current configuration runs around $1,300. Do you want to buy one for your auditions? No, call me and I'll lend you one of mine. How's that? But if you want to go high end, this is where you want to be. You can get higher end cameras. You can spend all the way up to, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for a camera. But this prosumer level camera should probably be the most that you can spend. You could probably do your 48-hour film festival with a camera just like this, all right? In between that, I just recently found this for my daughter. This is a Canon Vixia HF S100. It's also full HD, 1920 by 1080, but it has some unique features on it. First of all, it has a 30 power zoom. It has controls for focus and for zoom and for exposure. It has lots of controls that once you turn the menu on, you'll be able to see. But it has 2 features that are really, really important to someone who's trying to make recordings. Number 1, it has a 1/8-inch microphone input. So it doesn't rely solely on the microphones that sit on the front of the lens. I can actually plug other microphones into this camera. In addition to that, it has a headphone jack, a 1/8 inch headphone jack. So now I can make sure that I'm listening to what the audio that the camera is collecting via that microphone port. In addition to that, it has an HDMI output. The reason you want that is because one day you're going to want to record to something other than just your camera. For example, we record to a hard drive through our production switcher. You want that HDMI output. So the three things to look for when you buy your own consumer-based camera are a microphone input, a headphone output, and an HDMI AV output. It's important to get these. This camera, bought new a couple of years ago, would have cost around $800. One of my team members just found one on eBay for around $300. And it's a perfectly capable camera, and it's a good way to get not only a camera that you can shoot your auditions with, but again, I would bet that you could make a 48-hour film festival project with this camera and not have any problems. So you don't have one, maybe you have a DSLR. The DSLR, modern DSLRs, usually have a microphone, a 1/8 inch microphone input. I know the Canons and the Nikons do. And they also have a 1/8 inch headphone output. So you can do it with your DSLR. What if you don't have a DSLR with microphone inputs and headphone outputs? Let's say what you have is a point and shoot camera just like this. Now this particular point and shoot camera will shoot a 1920 by 1080 30 frames per second full HD movie, but the audio is collected in these two little holes right here. So of course the audio isn't going to be very good for you. So what I've done in the past, and I actually recorded an interview for a recent documentary that I was doing out in California with this exact camera and this pocket recorder. Now these pocket digital recorders have become very resolute as well. If you connect a lavalier microphone or one of the other microphone options that we're going to show you in just a few moments to this, and I forgot something. Would you hand me that slate over there, please? So I'm sure you've seen all of this in the movies. As they start a scene, and hold that for just a second, they start a scene with something called a slate. Some people call it a clapper, and the reason they call it a clapper is because it makes that sound. The reason it's configured the way that it is that back when they were first making film didn't record audio. The audio had to be recorded to a separate device, and then an editor would take that film and that audio, and they would sync them up by using the slate. So at the beginning of the scene, you'd see the slate close. They'd put it right in front of the camera like that. They'd close it like that, and two things would happen. In the camera, it would record the frame at which that clapper actually shut down on itself, and the audio engineer would record a sharp smack. So the editor that was trying to put these two things together would take the audio sharp smack, combine it with the video or the visual of that closing, sync them up, and now the two were synced up and in line with one another. If you don't have a clapper, and what you have is a camera and a separate digital recorder, you can still do this simply by doing that. That'll give you the same effect as your hands close. You'll see the visual effect of your hands closing, and it makes that sharp crack that you can sync them up with in your editing software. So now you have some camera options. That should work for you whether you're using a high-end camera in the $1,300, the prosumer quality camera in the $1,300 range, or using your point and shoot and a digital recorder. The combination of those two and a good lavalier microphone will give you what you need. Now, if you need a lavalier microphone, the ones that we're using are in the $400 to $500 range because they're connected to a wireless transmitter, and I don't have a cable following me around. But if you go to Radio Shack, they have a lavalier microphone that sells for about $30 with a 1/8 inch pin that will fit directly into that digital recorder. So that's a good option for you if you have a simple point and shoot camera and a digital recorder. You're in the movie making business for about $300. Let's take a break, and I'll come back and talk about the various microphone options.
3, 2, 1.
And we're back. Let's talk about audio and microphones for just a minute. So you basically have three choices when you're dealing with microphones. And then inside of that, there's a plethora of options that you can chase after. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to tell you the decisions I've made about audio and why I made them, and leave you in a pretty good position because it doesn't have to get too expensive. The first one I'm going to talk about is this lavalier microphone. Now, if I were to put my hand over it, it would make a big sound, so I'm just going to point to it. The lavalier microphone fits underneath my chin, pinned onto my shirt. It's very unobtrusive. It picks up real good sound. It doesn't pick up a lot of the echo from the room as a microphone that's held away from you does. It's very directional, right up into my face. It should go right in this area here, about 6 inches below my chin. This particular lavalier microphone plugs into an adapter, a control box. And the control box has a feature that enables me either to connect a cable to it, or in this case, a wireless transmitter. So what I've done is connected this wireless transmitter to my lavalier microphone. It's transmitting to a receiver at our production unit, so there's no wires connecting me to our production unit. I'm free to move around the room. So, lavalier microphone. As I mentioned before, you can get an inexpensive lavalier microphone at Radio Shack for about $30 with a 1/8 inch mini pin that will plug right into your digital recorder or the 1/8 inch input on your camera. So you can connect it directly from your lavalier microphone and into your camera. A second option is the handheld mic. Now, as I mentioned earlier, or someone mentioned earlier, casting directors don't particularly care to see the microphone in the shot. So you'd either have to hold it low, or as we showed earlier when we were demonstrating the natural lighting from the window, you can use a microphone stand to hold it directly in front of you. Now, here's where it gets sticky wicket, and the sticky wicket comes in the connection. This particular microphone, this lavalier microphone, and the shotgun microphone that I'm about to show you all have what is referred to as a 3-pin XLR. I'm going to recommend, if you make any investments in microphones as much as possible, to go with a 3-pin XLR configuration. And the reason is it gives you a lot of flexibility. So for example, if I wanted to take this handheld microphone and connect it to my camera, I could find an XLR cable that plugged directly into my microphone. And then on the other side, I have a 1/8 inch pin that plugs directly into my camera. I have a 30-foot cable that goes along with this. Now, this particular configuration, because it's a Samsung microphone, handheld microphone, is pretty expensive, but you can get an XLR handheld microphone at Radio Shack for about $30. This cable will cost you about $25. So for around $55, you have not quite professional, but well on your way to having a pretty good audio system in which to conduct your audition. All right? So the key is the configurability, the adaptability, and the flexibility of the 3-pin XLR. And again, you can find these at Radio Shack. While this is not Radio Shack, you can find one just like it. This is actually from Radio Shack. The last microphone option you have, and I think of this as the most flexible, is what is referred to as the shotgun microphone. This is a Rode shotgun microphone. The reason it's called a shotgun, I'm actually not sure, but I know that I can point it in a general direction and it picks up the sound from that general direction. Now, it'll give me about 10 to 15 feet leeway. The more expensive the microphone, the more distance you can have between your subject and the microphone. This is a windsock that fits right over it, so that on windy days, we can keep from having the wind affect what's happening with the microphone. The last nice thing about this is in an environment where there's a lot of background noise, this particular microphone makes a great interview microphone as you go back and forth, because it picks up the voices nearest it and doesn't pick up a lot of the background noise. It does pick up some, but just enough to be unobtrusive and give you a sense of the ambient levels in whatever room you're in. So it's a little bit more flexible than the handheld or the lavalier. And in addition, as you saw earlier, when we had Elnora do her audition, you can mount this in a mic stand. It's going to pick up a little bit of background echo because it's just the nature of the way that it works. But again, it wouldn't be enough to probably disturb a casting director any worse than you trying to talk directly into your camera would. All right? So those are your options: lavalier, handheld, shotgun, and your options for connections include the wired, with a cable or the wireless, and it gets a little bit more expensive when you do this, but you can plug this wireless transmitter into your 3-pin XLR, and now I can start communicating with the receivers at our production switcher. Okay? So we're going to take a break right now, and we're going to come back with our first audition and our first lighting scenario. Before we start with our lighted audition, I want to talk about the effect that each of the lights that I showed you before earlier has on the actor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn them on, and I'm going to point them in the direction of the actor, make some changes, and we're going to switch over to the actor's camera in the center, and you're going to see the effect that each of the lights has on them. Before we do that, I'm going to ask my crew to save the 2 halogen lamps that we're working with in the studio so that we're properly lighted. So we'll turn those off. It's going to get dark for just a second, but I'm doing this so that you can see exactly the effect that each light has on the subject. Okay? So the first one we're going to use, which I think of as the most flexible, a little bit more expensive, I told you about $70, is the video LED lamp. And I'm going to turn that on by just turning on the switch right here. And I'm not going to point it directly into the camera because it would highlight the camera. And then I'm going to show you what it looks like on the subject and what the different tools that I have to adjust for the subject and what they're doing. What I'm going to do first is I'm just going to point it in their general direction, and I'm going to do it low. And the reason I'm going to do that is because you're going to see a reflection in his glasses that eventually we want to get rid of, and then I'm going to show you how to do that. So this is lighting at about a 45-degree angle at eye level. So if you could see that in the green camera. So 45-degree angle at eye level. Now, I don't know whether you can see it. I can't see it from here, but I'm willing to bet you can see some reflection in the glasses. In order to correct that, I want to raise the light above eye level, point it down until it goes away, right about there. So now I have what is really a very natural lighting effect. Again, the Renaissance artists, especially the artists like Rembrandt, used this style of lighting using natural light. And eventually, what they were looking for is something that you'll see on Aaron's left cheek called the Rembrandt triangle. So it's made from the shape of his nose, and they would look at that, and if you look at any of those Renaissance paintings, you'll see the Rembrandt triangle. Now, I can adjust the intensity of this light by doing one of two things in the case of the LED. I can move it. That is, I can move it closer to the subject and increase the amount of light, or I can move it further away and decrease the amount of light, and it softens it up because it spreads it out further. The second option I have with this light is that I have a rheostat, and by adjusting that rheostat, I can bring the light down. All right, just go all the way down to nothing. All right? So I'm going to turn it full bright, and I'm going to take this soft filter. It has magnetic attachments. I'm going to put it over the light. I have to put it on the right way, otherwise it rejects it. All right? And now we've softened it up. I'm going to hold it at 45, 45. 45 degrees at an angle away from the subject and 45 degrees higher than the subject. That gets rid of the reflection, very soft light. I'm looking for the Rembrandt triangle on the right side. Now, the other thing that I can control here is the color of the light. So right now I have set at 5600 Kelvin, which is very blue light, and I'm just going to run down all the way to 3200 Kelvin, which is very yellow light, and you'll see the transition made in the subject, all right? So here we go. And he starts warming up. Now, some of that is going to be corrected out by the fact that we have our camera set to auto white balance. It'll try and take it out, but it doesn't happen that quickly, so you can actually see the change as we go from a very warm light, which I would use if we had a lot of window light, a lot of blue light coming in. I'd correct it with the yellow light. Vice versa, if we had a lot of yellow light, as in the halogens, I'd go over to the blue side and correct it there. All right? So that's our LED, most flexibility, not very expensive, in the $70 range. And if I use the 45 by 45 rule, I would have a very good quality light on that subject. If I wanted to put an extra LED out there, I would put it 45 degrees opposite. I would put it at eye level rather than 45 degrees high. And I would set it about half the intensity of whatever I had set here. That would be the fill light, right? And it would fill in the shadows on the left side of Aaron's face. Okay? So I'm going to put that down, turn it off, and I'm going to pick up that fluorescent lamp that I showed you earlier that I paid $28 for, and you'll see a similar effect. I only have two options when it comes to intensity. It actually has two switches on it that powers each side of the fluorescent bulb. So I'm going to plug that in, and I'm going to point it in the general direction of the camera. You'll see side 1 go on and side 2. All right? So that's a nice full soft light, but the only options, I don't have choice of color, and fluorescent light tends to be either green or purple. Your auto white balance in your camera will take care of it, but if you leave it on something other, you go to the fluorescent mode in your camera to correct for either the green or the purple. You'll actually have two fluorescent modes in your camera. The more modern cameras have both the green and the purple correction. So you're going to see here, I'm going to start real close, and it's going to look pretty harsh on him, and I'm going to do it at eye level 45. Now, even for something this direct and this close, that's still a relatively soft light. I can soften it even further by bringing it back and getting the glare out of his glasses by bringing it up to a 45-degree angle. Now, those two, and I'm sure they're out of the frame for the actor. Are they in the actor's frame? Yeah, they're out of the actor's frame. So you could put these relatively close. Eleonora, tell me when it gets into the actor's frame, would you please? Right there. So I could put this light this close and it wouldn't be in the actor's frame. And as you can see, as we go to either the red or the green camera, you can see how close I actually have it to Aaron. So two of these lights, what I would do with them is I'd put one about this close at a 45-degree angle. I'd put the other, and I'd have two choices. I could put it at this level and turn down one side of the lamp, and that would give me the 50% that I needed for fill, or I could leave it on and move it back twice as far. All right? So now I have the basic lighting tool in a key light and a fill light. A key light, and sometimes it's referred to as a main light, or a fill light. But today, I promised you that we were going to use the least expensive solution that I could find. That leads us to our $15 aluminum reflector and vanity, 150-watt vanity bulb. So I'm going to plug that in here, excuse me. And this doesn't have a switch on it. The switch consists of me plugging it into this extension cord. And you're going to see this 150 watts really does produce, in this particular reflector, does produce a lot of light. Now, one of the things I'm going to suggest to you is let this heat up and warm up first, because it gets brighter and warmer after about 3 minutes. So it's as it warms up, it actually gets a little bit more, a little bit brighter. Now, this is going to produce a lot of light on this subject even before it starts showing up in the frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the frame, and Aaron, please don't be, I'm going to get this pretty close to you so they can see it. Eleonora, you tell me when I'm in the frame. And you can see that it produces a heck of a lot of light, even with the white balance and our automatic gain control on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back off with this, because the only intensity control I have with this light is by moving further away. It'll get progressively softer and broader. So it gets to be a very nice soft light. And if I'm looking for that Rembrandt triangle, I can just lift it up 45 degrees and I get it. Then one on the other side at twice the distance away would give me the fill that I needed. I'm going to move back in at 45 degrees, and you can see it gets a little bit more harsh. So depending on the look of the audition, of your audition, if you're going for a hard film noir kind of look, you're going to want this close and tight and further of an angle, and the more angle I go, the more film noir it's going to get. All right? And I wouldn't put any fill on the other side of that. So by moving the light across this arc of lighting for the subject and up and down, I can produce different effects. But with this particular light, if all I had was $45 to spend on lighting, I would go with a 10-inch reflector and what is referred to as a vanity light. The reason they call them vanity lights is because A, they're very soft, and B, they reflect all the way around. So this is a really good solution if you don't have a lot of money to spend. As I said earlier, with three of these particular lights, you should have enough light to do your audition. I would put one as the key or main light, one as the fill light, and then I would choose whether to use the third light, as you'll see in one of our auditions, either as a rim light on the subject or a backlight behind the subject. Okay? So we're going to take a short break, and we're actually going to set up a we'll start with one light configuration for Aaron's audition. We're going to go ahead and record the audition with that light, and then we'll be back with, and we'll come back and we'll add 2 more lights one at a time. We'll add a fill light, and then we'll add a rim light. All of them, these 10-inch reflectors with the 150-watt vanity bulbs. Okay? So let's take a break, do our setup, and we'll be back in just a minute. I've taken a pair of these 10-inch reflectors along with a 150-watt vanity bulb. Total cost $15 if you debate over the dents in the aluminum reflector. And I've put 2 of them up. I'm using light stands just because they're easy for us, but I have put these on doors, on chairs, on ladders. You can put them on anything that gives you the height that you need. What I've done is I've taken the first one and I've put it, I'm going to say, about 5 feet away, 4.5 to 5 feet away from the subject, 45 degrees away from them at the lateral angle, and then about 45 degrees up. That's going to give me 2 benefits. Number one, it's going to reduce the amount of reflection in his glasses. And we're going to have another problem with the fill light that I'll show you in just a minute we have to correct. Whenever I'm doing lighting, I always do the lights one at a time first. So I see the effect that I want with the fill light, main light, and then I turn it off and see if I get the effect that I want with the fill light. And that's what we're going to do today. And the other light is over on this side. I'm going to move around. Michael. I'm going to have to apologize, of course, because I've been calling him Aaron all morning, and this is Michael. And I've put a second reflector and vanity light twice the distance away because I want half the amount of light to fall on him. So I put it twice the distance away from the subject, and I've got it about level with his eyes. Now, this subject wears glasses, and I may not be able to use that, but we're going to see that first. We're going to start by having our crew turn off our studio lights so that you can see the effect that each of the lights has on the subject, all right? So let's save the studio lights. And I'm going to plug in our main light first. All right? So I can tell just by where I'm at right now, there shouldn't be any reflection in his glasses. I should have a nice soft light on the right side of his face, and I should have that little Rembrandt triangle on the left side of his face. But as you can see, this is pretty much dark over here. I want to do 2 things. I want to light that up, but I want contrast between the key light and the fill light, so I don't want to light it up as much. And I do that by moving my fill light twice the distance away than my key light. And remember, I said it's always good to check your lights one at a time before you put them all together. So I'm going to pull the plug on my main light. I'm going to slide over here, and I'm going to plug in my fill light. Now that's a nice broad light. It also puts a catch light in his eyes. I can't tell from where I'm at if it's creating a reflection in his glasses. It is, so I got a couple of options there. I can start moving it around to the side until the reflection goes away. You tell me. Right there, okay? So that's just enough. Now, I don't like that it's lighting this far back, so I want to create some distance between the subject and the light so I can reduce the reflection in his glasses but not fill that back. So I'm just going to move it progressively further back until I'm happy with it right about there. And again, this is going to take experience. So I have my main light, which is off right now, and my fill light. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to turn my main light back on, and you should see a complete effect. Shouldn't be any reflection in his glasses. He should have a nice light on this side, and there should be contrast between this side of the subject and this side of the subject, meaning I can actually see the textures and dimensions of his face. So that's what you're trying to do with this. Now, the only thing that we're missing at this point, there's two things that I'd be concerned about if I was shooting this. Number one, we have a big window over here with that white reflected wall. So it's actually throwing some blue light up on the side of his head. And because it has dark hair, it actually shows up as a highlight. If that was a blonde, if Michael was a blonde instead of a brunette, it would actually turn their hair blue. And you would have to cover that window up to protect him from that additional blue light, because we're working with incandescent light right here, which is very yellow. The other thing is, I don't have him separated from the background. The background to me still feels intrusive, and we're not going to change that right now. We're going to do that in the next. We're going to do that in the next scene. Do we need some water? Yeah. Why don't we bring that in? Is it getting hot?
It is getting hot.
Thank you. All right. So in our next, in the next audition, we'll have a standing subject, and we're gonna both light the background, and we're gonna do what's referred to as a low rim light. We're not gonna put it up high because it just gets in the way of the camera. We're gonna put it down low, and the light is actually gonna spill over the top of his shoulders and separate him from the background. But right now, we have a relatively effective audition configuration, and we can go ahead with Michael's audition if you guys are ready. What do you need? All right? So I'm going to stand back, turn my microphone off, and we'll turn Michael's on. And action.
Oh, don't worry, he won't say anything. Where were we? Oh, yes, I'm not wearing any panties.
Well, it was like 12 hours ago you were just shy little virgin. Now you aren't not wearing any pennies?
You do that to me.
Look, Gloria, I'm exhausted, okay? Not to mention your sister's boyfriend made a smoothie out of my nards, okay? I'm just not in the mood.
Oh, I see how it is. My father warned me about boys like you. I'm just another notch in your belt.
No, it's not like that.
Oh, how is it then?
It's like, well,
Oh,
it's like if, God. It's like you're so damn precious that I would feel that if we tried to use our love in a physical way, every time that we would diminish this poetry that we have.
you're my hero. Don't ever leave me.
Oh, of course not, of course not.
Good, because I find you.
And very nicely done, both of you. All right, so we've completed our audition. Have I got my mic back up? All right, again, let me review. Go to our green camera. We have a main light at about 4.5 to 5 feet away from the subject, at 45 degrees in this position away from the subject, and 45 degrees in height. Our 10-inch reflector with our 150-watt vanity bulb. Our fill light is exactly the same configuration, but it's at about eye level, and it's brought around to the side so that it fills the light without creating additional reflection in his glasses. Okay, so that's our first configuration with the two lights. We're going to add a third light, and we're going to do it in two ways. We're going to add the third light so that it's a rim light, that is, it lights the subject and separates them from the background. And then we're going to do a third light, and we're going to light the background in opposition. After that, we're going to do the full Toby Younis interview configuration that includes a lot of expensive equipment that one day we should all be able to afford ourselves. All right? So let's take a break right now, and we'll come back in just a few minutes. All right. Let's try our next audition configuration. And this is going to be a 3-light setup that we're going to use the third light to project onto the back wall that enables us to separate the subject from the background. And it gives it a little bit more, it gives the scene just a little bit more texture and 3-dimensionality, even though it's a 2-dimension frame. So Aaron is up here now. I'm getting the name straight after a morning, of course, and knowing him from other configurations. We have our halogens on, and I'm going to ask that our crew save the halogens, please. And I'm going to start by taking our third reflector and 150-watt vanity, and I know it's going to be hard to see me right now until we get these lights all set up, and I'm going to go put it at the back of the scene. There's a plug back there, so I'm going to have our camera person follow me back there, and all I'm going to do is plug this right in, And there's a bench back here by the fireplace, and all I'm going to do is set that on the bench. Now, you're not going to see a lot of light, but you're going to see enough light to separate the subject from the background. All right? It's not a whole bunch. It doesn't have to be a whole bunch. It just has to be a little bit. Then what I'm going to do is turn on my key light, and you should be able to see this if we're looking at the green camera right now. All I'm going to do is turn on my green light, my key light, and then I'm going to come over this side and turn on my fill light. All right, so what you have there is one of two 3-light configurations. In this case, the third light is used to light the background and separate the subject from that background. I just noticed that it needs to go a little higher, so I'm going to go back over there and point it up against the wall just a tad. This isn't complete unless I trip at least once. So we're going to turn that just a little bit higher. And like I said, all I'm doing is setting it up on a bench here, on a concrete bench that's part of the lighting, part of the facility that we're using, okay? I haven't changed my lights much since Aaron isn't wearing glasses. I've actually brought my fill light back around to about the 45, so it really does behave like a normal fill light. I don't have to worry about reflections in his eyes. And because he's standing rather than sitting, I raised both our lights so that they're still at the 45-degree angle in terms of the height, but our previous subject was sitting down, so we had to change the height of each of the lamps. So standard 3-light configuration, number 1, key light, fill light, and background light. And now we're ready to shoot the audition. I'm going to step off stage.
My love. Love!
What? I'm busy.
I brought a surprise for you.
What is it? Oh, Charles, she's beautiful.
Isn't she?
When she wakes up, I'm going to introduce her to the pigs.
Oh, the pigs are surely going to love her. They will.
All right. Now, I noticed one thing about that particular audition, and that was Michael was turning his head down and to the right. And the effect is, Aaron, I will get these before the end of this thing. Aaron was turning his head down and to the right, and the effect was that it was cutting off the light from his eyes. So we were losing that catch light. If I had a situation like that where I had an actor, and I guess what they were looking at something, he was looking at something on the ground as opposed to part of the scene, I would actually lower my fill light so that it caught him in a way that it kept him well lit, even though he turned his head down and slightly to the right. It would be an adjustment I would have to make when I shot the scene a second time. But again, what we're looking for is dimension and texture. And between my key light here, my fill light there, and if I wanted to change it, the only thing I would want to do to give it some more texture is I would either move my fill light further back so I get more shadow on his left side, or I would move my key light in closer. And now it gets really contrasty, right? And again, what your casting directors are looking for is what I would call average lighting. They're not looking for contrasty, they're looking for average lighting so that the subject is well lit and separated from the background. So we're going to take a short break right now, and I'm going to go into the second of the 3-light configurations, and that is I'm going to cast a rim light on the subject that has the additional effect of separating of them from the background. So let's take a couple of minutes break while we do that setup. All right, let's go to the second of our 2 3-light configurations. And this is the, rather than using the backlight on the back wall, we're going to use it on the subject and cast what is referred to as a rim light that should come right up here on the shoulders, the back of the head, shoulders on both sides. And again, the idea is to separate the subject from the background. Now there's two ways you can set up a rim light. One of them is pretty complex because the rim light, in order to be balanced, has to be directly over the subject's head. That's hard to do, of course, with a light stand or anything else, because that means the light stand would also stick out of his head, making the audition E look not very well. So another option, if you don't have one of those C stands that enables you to put the stand off center and then the light overhead, is to use a shorter object. Now this light stand I actually found at a photography store that was going out of business. And it was just kind of cool because it's very short, it's very compact. The legs, the feet actually disassemble themselves, and I can take it apart and it fits into a very small package. But I can also create a rim light by placing this low and behind the subject. That creates just enough spill on the shoulders as it overlaps here to create that separation in the background that I'm looking for. So we're going to start there. I'm going to have my crew turn off the halogens, so turn off our studio lights. And I'm going to set this light directly behind the subject and kind of aim it up at the back of his head. And I'm going to plug that in before I plug the others in. And you're not going to see a great big effect. You're going to see a little tiny effect right around the tops of his shoulders. I'm going to aim that up just a little bit more. And all it does is separate this area right here from the background. The further back I move it, the more you'll see the additional spill. And that's all I'm looking for, separation from the background. Now, when I add my main light, and I had moved this back further, so we're going to move this up just a little bit more. My fill light, both of these at about a 45-degree angle. The main light 45 degrees up, the fill light at about eye level. So this is a much more subtle way to separate the subject from the background without having to light the background. If I had a fourth of these reflectors, I would put it like we did in the last configuration on the background. All right? So we can go into the final of our audition scenes. I'm going to step off camera here while we do that.
My love. Love!
What? I'm busy.
I brought a surprise for you.
What is it? Oh, Charles, she's beautiful.
Isn't she?
When she wakes up, I'm going to introduce you to the pigs.
The pigs are surely going to love her. They will.
Yeah, looks really good. All right, so this is as much as you can do with the 4-light configuration. In this case, the 3-light configuration. I'd go with a 4th light, so now you're spending $60 on the combination, you know, the 4 $15 reflectors and light bulb combinations. And the only thing that I would do is I would take that 4th light and cast it against the background, giving me additional separation between my subject and that background. The only other thing that I'd play with is each subject is different. For example, I noticed this subject's eyes were just a little bit more closed than the previous subject's, so I may change the lighting to fill in and make sure that that catch light was in his eyes by lowering my key light just a little bit or using my fill light to get the same thing, because what I really want and what gives an actor life is the catch light that you see in his eyes. If you ever feel like you're looking at an actor that has no life, it is very likely that whoever's placed that light on that actor has done it in a way so that there's no catch light in the eyes. It makes the eyes look very, very dead. So let's turn up the halogens. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take a long break, although you won't see it in the program, and we're going to set up my interview lighting, my interview and audition lighting setup. And you're going to see why I've chosen, after years and years, this. I consistently use this for the past probably 20 years after 10 years worth of experimentation. It works for me. It gives a very good look to the subject, unless you don't want the subject to look good, and I'll show you how to get to that point, because I do have interviews in which I do not want the subject to look good. And, but this will make everybody look good. It's especially flattering for women and for any actor that wants to look good in front of the camera. Okay? So we'll take a break now, and we'll come back, and you're going to see that entire configuration. Takes us a while to set it up. All right? Well, welcome back. We're about to go to our final configuration. And this configuration is the one that I've used for the past 20 years to conduct interviews for the documentaries that I've made, and it's also a very good audition configuration. I'm going to explain everything that I have in place and why I've selected to have it in place. The other thing that I want to mention is all of this equipment that I'm about to show you can be purchased from Steve Kaser Photographic Lighting in California, and their website, and you should see it printed down at the bottom of this frame, is skaeser, Kaeser.com. So that's where I purchase all of my lighting equipment. I do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's the least expensive, and number two, I'm really hard on my lighting equipment, and so it's better for me to buy the inexpensive stuff that works rather than buying the expensive stuff because they break the same way anyway. So let me show you what I've got here. We're going to switch over to the wide angle camera. The first thing that I have is an 8-foot light stand with a 1,000-watt halogen head and what's referred to as a 36-inch softbox. This softbox has metal reflection inside, but it has two baffles. One, a small baffle, white baffle that fits inside the softbox, and the other is the external baffle. So I'm going to turn it towards the camera if I can, and let's see if you can see the effect that it has. It's very, very soft, very indirect lighting, and it makes everybody look really, really good. So you could actually get away with just that light, the 1,000-watt softbox, and life would be really happy. But as I told you before, what you're looking for is that fill light. You want to have that fill that fills the other side of the subject. Instead of using lights, years ago I decided to go with a reflector. And the reflector that I chose is made by Westcott, and it actually has two sides. It has a gold side and a silver side. And depending on the subject and how you want the subject to look, you use the gold side for a softer look, the silver side for a harder look. You can also use white as an option. White, I've discovered, makes everybody just too white. It seems to add, take away any color and just transform it all to white, so I use it very, very rarely. Let me show you my gold reflector. Again, I'm going to turn it around so that you can see it in the camera, spin it all the way here, and you'll see it's just a gold reflector on a Westcott reflector mount on a light stand. What I'm going to have Sean Scott do is have him go to the blue camera so that you can see the effect that it has on the subject. Now you're going to see a lot of contrast between the side of his face that's lit by the softbox and what happens when I turn the reflector in his direction. And you're going to see a very minor change, but it's going to be a soft, really nice fill. And it has a very nice effect on the subject, making everybody, I say, look good. So as I spin it in and catch the light from the softbox onto the reflector and then onto the subject, you'll see it transform and warm him up right there. So I'm going to lock that down in place. Most actors would love to have this lighting follow around them, just everywhere they go. That's what my daughter asks, can you just follow me around with this lighting? So that's the second step. The third step is I've added, and I carry with me, a folding background with two sides. One side tends to be a bit on the blue gold side. The other side tends to be on the brown gold side. So what I've done is put it on the blue gold side, and I've taken one of my 1,000-watt halogen lamp heads, mounted it on the short light stand that I showed you before, and I'm just going to cast that up at a diagonal to create some separation between the background and the subject. So just a rough diagonal, not too harsh, a little soft. And I'm going to show you a little trick that I learned from YouTube, where we all learn stuff from, right? This is a rheostat that I made from parts at one of the Home Depots or Lowe's big box stores. It's a 1,000-watt rheostat that you would buy if you wanted to put the lights on your house, in your basement or your rec room on a rheostat. It's a spinning rheostat, and it gives me the ability to put these rheostats over by where my camera is, where my camera's located, and make the adjustments that I want on either the foreground or the background without having to move around. The other thing in my case is that when you put these soft boxes or these lamp heads up on the 8-foot stand, I can't reach the on-off switch and I can't reach the rheostat that's on that. So this is a convenient short level rheostat that gives me the ability to control the light without having to bring it down. You turn it off and bring it down. One other thing is halogens are very sensitive. Unlike the incandescent lights that we've been using all day, halogens are very sensitive and they're very expensive. So you want to make sure that before you move a halogen anywhere, 1 inch or 1 mile, you turn it off, move it, and turn it back on, because it's highly likely that if you move it while it's on, the halogen wires are going to touch together and they're going to flame out, and you're going to have to, find another $30 bulb to put in so that you can finish your shoot. Just a quick reminder, okay? So I think, I haven't seen it in the camera, but I feel like I've got the look that I want, as long as there's nothing in the frame. Eleanor, can you tell me if any of the objects other than are in the frame? And he should be looking pretty good right about now. So I think we can go ahead with our audition. We'll switch over to the blue camera.
Don't worry, he won't say anything. All right, where were we? Oh yeah, that's right. I'm not wearing any panties.
It's like 12 hours ago you were this shy little virgin, now you're not wearing any panties?
You do that to me.
Look, Gloria, I'm exhausted, okay? Not to mention your sister's boyfriend made me a smoothie out of my nards, okay? I'm just not in the mood.
Oh, I see how it is. My father warned me about boys like you. I'm just another notch in your belt.
No, it's not like that.
Oh, how is it then?
Well, it's like, it's like, okay, it's like you're so damn precious that I feel like if we expressed our love in a physical way every time, that it would diminish the poetry that we have together.
You're my hero.
Cool.
Don't ever leave me.
Oh, I won't.
Good, because I find you.
All right, that is our lighting workshop for the day. We've given you a lot of configurations to work with. In addition to that, we've given you some tips on how to select your cameras, how to select your lighting situations, how to select your audio to get the best possible audition result for you. We hope that using some of these tools and techniques, you have some very successful recordings, some very successful auditions, some very successful opportunities, and we look forward to seeing you on the big screen one day. And when you do and you're interviewed, mention that it's all started with the Toby Younis Lighting Workshop. I'd appreciate that. So let me bring Dirk back in so he can close up for us. There we are, sir.
Toby, thank you so much. This has just been a wonderful opportunity for our actors and for the audience to get some real insights on lighting, sound, and we really appreciate you and your whole team, Streaming New Mexico, for doing this workshop for us. And for those of you watching, I hope you submit an audition to our program, and we're going to have 2 of our auditions going on, one with Filmstock, partnership with Filmstock, and the other with the New Mexico Film Foundation, and a showcase later on in the year. So thank you very much for helping folks out.
It's been our pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity. We're glad to do it, and we look forward to future collaborations with your organization and with your actors.
Absolutely.
Right? This is Dirk Norris and Toby Younis for Streaming New Mexico and the New Mexico Film Foundation signing off for the day. Thanks.